Tomorrow, Democratic voters in Maine are set to make a man with a Nazi tattoo and allegations of violence against women their party's nominee for senator. Several women have spoken out against Graham Platner, and now Democrat Congressman Khanna, a previous champion for the Me Too movement, is demanding to see proof. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host Harris Faulkner and Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Carly Shimkus, Fox & Friends' first co-host, and Lawrence Jones, Fox & Friends co-host. Let's start here. Congressman Khanna campaigned with Platner over the weekend, even after those allegations of violence came to light. When he was pressed on his support for Platner, this is what he said.
Obviously, look, if there was evidence of violence, I would not support him. If there was evidence of sexual assault, I'd have zero support for him.
You said there was no evidence of violence. In your view, there's nothing credible at this point?
My view is that even according to the New York Times piece, they said there was no harm, no injury. There was toxicity, and there was verbal intimidation, which I condemn. But Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence. That, to me, is a red line. All
right. Well, to sum up the sentiment from Congressman Khanna, he wants to see bruises or it did not happen. Now, here's a reminder of what one of Platner's exes told the New York Times. She said that he regularly grabbed her by the shoulder, sometimes hard enough to leave marks, and on one occasion yanked her out of a cab by her wrist after an argument when she wanted to stay in the car. She also said during one argument, he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so that she could not get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Platner has admitted he went through a dark period, but denies the allegations.
There are some allegations in this piece that I just want to be kind of unequivocal about are simply not true. Anything alleging physicality, anything alleging that I knew what my tattoo was, these are the statements of someone who's politically motivated.
Fox News asked voters in Maine what they thought of this, and one dismissed the claims outright.
The girl did say yesterday to the Times, she did say that she was manhandled and had bruises.
I heard on NPR just 5 minutes ago that she said he never put a hand on her. So anyway, But
is there anything that would change your mind at this point?
Absolutely not.
Lawrence, two things cannot be true. You cannot say you believe women like Lindsay, and number two, that Graham Platner did not engage in violence, because Lindsay says he did.
Yeah, and it's not just Lindsay, it's multiple women that have these allegations. Some would argue, fellow lawyers over here would argue that what one of them accused wasn't just assault, but kidnapping. Restricted her from leaving, so she felt unsafe. It is the abuse, it is the cheating, it is the kidnapping, and it's the Nazi tattoo, right? They went after Kavanaugh over a yearbook, okay? They went after him with a witness that couldn't even get her story correct. Even her own best friend says, I have no knowledge of this, and I was at these events that she was speaking of. So the standard has definitely changed here from believing women to having all of these accounts. And then the media goes after the woman because she's a conservative, right? She was dating a guy, so obviously that didn't matter to him. So we'll see what happens here. But again, if he is the nominee, the Democratic Party, I don't want to hear anything about Nazi ever again on our side. I don't want to hear anything about going through people's background for stuff that happened 30 years ago when we have recent accounts and they refuse to take them seriously.
Harris, and the New York Times devoted 10 pages to her work history. But not only that, so Khanna says he doesn't see evidence. We know that they left out some of her corroborating evidence. We know that there were 2 other accounts of assault that were left out, according to Lindsay.
Well, not only that, but we know contemporaneously when we were reporting that story last week that there were at least 2 other women, and the 3 of them were deciding what would happen next in this scenario. So what we don't know is how much other evidence is out there. And if there were, you know, I mean, maybe somebody took a picture of a bruise. We don't know that. What we also know is that as he set up as P. Hustle 0331 on the Kick app, and I say this daily, what bothers me most about that is not whether or not he was, you know, playing outside the boundaries of his marriage, but with whom he was playing. That app is known for not having good guardrails about who's on it and their ages. And it has, at least it did when they started looking at it in 2022, all up until now, Well, how many 13 to 17-year-olds are on there? Well, it's an eye-popping percentage. I think anything above 0 would be, but it's way beyond that. And so how can he, with conviction, say, oh, I know for a fact none of them was minors? Well, then let's see the facts on that. He was still on it last week, so can you show us some facts? But the voters in Maine are not asking that. They're asking him to replace a woman who's been a 5-term senator there, Susan Collins. And they just want to replace that Republican. So maybe they'll put up with anything.
Maybe. And let's revisit, Emily, what Ro Khanna said during Kavanaugh. Here was his standard. He said, I stand with Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Brett Kavanaugh is not fit to sit on the Supreme Court. Believe survivors. He has another one that says, I believe Deborah Ramirez. I believe Anita Hill. Brett Kavanaugh should not be on the court. He was very big into believing women.
We have been subjected to and are now enjoying the receipts of, frankly, a party that has traded any type of morality and moral compass for partisanship. We saw this just a few weeks ago when Eric Swalwell, when the credible accusations came out and the allegations of his sexual assaults and more, where the condemnation calls stopped short of telling him to leave Congress. The whole point is, as long as that seat is blue, they frankly do not care what the behavior was for the person holding it. And we see that here. You know, there's crimes of moral turpitude. We see this, right, as an attorney. We're held to an ethical standard. That's why people are removed from being part of the bar for things like a DUI or things where it calls into question your moral judgment. So I'm not quite sure why, for an office like a senator position, right, one of 100 in the entire United States, that somehow people are now looking the other way, and that they throw around phrases like credible accusations and believe survivors and I stand with her and all the things. And while here it's so easy to just say, well, on NPR, well, not for this, well, everything's fine. And to your point, when they build up, all of a sudden these building blocks have created quite a tall tower about this individual where there's a lot of questions about him. And every day when we open the New York Times or the Washington Post, we have to see where there's this moral righteousness and condemnation of conservatives constantly and the decisions they make in and out of their marriage and what they wear and what they do on Sundays and things like that. And for some reason, there is such a blind eye by the Democrat Party to someone not only that may be holding a senatorial seat, but just for any candidate, for anyone still keeping it. And again, all it would take is one leader in that party to come out and say, this person's not fit to represent my party as a candidate. Why haven't they found someone better? This person is really rock bottom as a candidate. And if I personally were a Democrat, I would say, you know what, there's always going to be members of the swamp and toxic individuals, and they're always going to try to throw their hat in the ring. But I have lost my faith in this party because there is no one that said, you know what, this person, take a seat. Let's have someone better run.
And amazingly, the Graham Platner campaign announced they raised $200,000 after the New York Times report. So that tells you something about the base of the party. I, though, however, talked to John Featherston at the Maine Wire. He told me that he has talked to a lifelong Democrat who says, I'm leaving the party because of Graham Platner. I do think there are sober minds out there in Maine that won't let this guy cross the finish line in a general election. But Carly, John Featherston, the Maine Wire, I said to him, you know, you've been covering Graham Platner from the beginning. When did you know he had problems? He said, the moment he came on the scene, the Maine Wire was actually cited in the New York Times report, and he said, there is more to come, I assure you.
Oh, yeah.
So for Democrats to stick by him, it feels like a kamikaze mission.
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about because the controversies surrounding this person are endless. And keep in mind, it was last Tuesday when he met with senators, and they asked him, are any other allegations going to emerge? Speak now or forever hold your peace. He said no. And then 2 days later, this New York Times report comes out alleging that he abused an ex-girlfriend. So where this ends, nobody knows. And will there be allegations that come out closer to the November election that actually do sway Democrat voters' minds? Keep in mind, Maine is a blue state, but Susan Collins is this rare breed that has crossover appeal. In 2020, she was consistently down in the polls and then wound up winning by 8 points because of this appeal that she does end up having at the very last second. Democrats know that, which is why they're now doing these mental gymnastics to try and defend this guy when they were the champion of the Believe All Women Me Too movement. Hakeem Jeffries said yesterday that he hasn't been following the Graham Platner story.
Come on.
Really? Ro Khanna isn't even making sense right now trying to defend him. And then you have Sheldon Whitehouse said of Brett Kavanaugh at the time, we must believe survivors, not bully them. Now he's calling these Platner allegations a lot of nothing. So the reaction to this is so typical. given our political landscape, which is hyper-partisan and I think deeply gross.
Well, and the hypocrisy, too, there around the issue of believe all women and treat them well. Not that I've heard them say that, but I would think that that would be part of the creed, right? Their option is to run Janet Mills, the current governor, who suspended her campaign because she could see everything that was coming. She's like, I can't fight that wave. She's offered to get back in full force into the race. They're not taking that offer. No. So I think Republicans are smart. Keep your powder dry. Once that deadline passes in July, then come with that Oppo research.
Yep, no doubt about it. And folks like AOC who say, oh, I haven't had time to read the story. That's an untenable position between now and November. It's a long time.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.